This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. Manchester United look to have won the race to sign Benjamin Sesko. Does Sesko, Cunha and Mbeumo suddenly look like quite good? Or will they all arrive at Old Trafford and go backwards? That means Newcastle miss out on another player while Alexander Isak isn't allowed to the Newcastle United barbecue. Not the barbecue. Elsewhere, Villa sign a striker and Everton sign a manor house. We'll look ahead to the Championship that kicks off with promoted Birmingham against relegated Ipswich on Friday night. Also today, Russell Martin's Rangers get back on the horse. We'll pay tribute to George Costa and discuss the popularity of the name Barry. And we'll answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Ben Fisher, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Lars Sivertsen, hello.
Hello, Max.
And good morning, Barry Glendenning.
Hello, Max Rushden.
Let's start then with Benjamin Sesko. Manchester United look like they're going to get their man, paying 74 million to RB Leipzig for Benjamin Sesko. Fabrizio Romano tweeting he'd reached absolute total agreement with Manchester United on personal terms, and he wants to join Manchester United. Before we discuss why would you join Man United when any other team wants you, Lars, tell us a bit more about Sesko, because we've heard, along with Gyökeres, we have heard this name so many times this summer, but there are probably a lot of people listening who haven't seen a lot of him play.
Yeah, so he's very tall and he's fast for his size, fast in general, and he hits the ball really well. So that's exciting things for a striker. He came through the fizzy drink empire. He came through at RB Salzburg, and obviously when he came through there, you had a very tall blonde forward who ran fast for his size and would hit the ball really hard. And I think there were a fair few people who would look at that and go, "Hang on, we've seen this story before at Salzburg." So clearly, people were very excited about him. And the expectation was that he was going to go to the Bundesliga and completely blow the league away. And in the first season, he was good. He had 17 starts, 14 off the bench for Leipzig, scored 14 goals, going along at a good clip. But last season, 13 goals off 30 starts for Leipzig, which is not amazing for a centre-forward in the Bundesliga. But RB Leipzig were mostly crap. So again, as a striker, if your team is crap, it hurts you, right? It's harder. So he has... I think the phrase a lot of people are going to, which I would concur with, is that he has all the tools, right? He's got size, he's got speed, he can really wallop the ball. I think it's entirely plausible that he can score a lot of goals in the Premier League. I just balk at the price tag a little bit, because you're paying, that's, for me, if you're buying a striker out of the Bundesliga at that price, you want someone who is the finished article and is the real deal. And I don't think he's that. He kind of feels like he should have had a breakout, blow-up superstar season this year, and then that didn't happen. And then you go and pay 75 million for him. That feels a bit odd to me. And that if you're a United fan, you know that two teams who typically get this right more often than your team does, Arsenal and Liverpool, have both signed a striker in this window. Arsenal looked at Sesko and the price and thought, no, not doing that. We're going Gyökeres. Liverpool were prepared to pay that kind of money for a forward for the Bundesliga, but they went for Ekitike instead of Sesko. United are apparently now pulling the trigger in this kind of deal. I think it's very plausible that he will score goals. I think he's an upgrade on Rasmus Højlund. I'm puzzled by the price a little bit, especially when we know that United have other things to do. Like that midfield needs some help, and you've already spent a lot of money on Cunha and Mbeumo. You're going to spend a lot of money on Sesko. Allocation of resources. I have some questions, but the player is good.
Yeah, I mean, they spent 64 on Højlund, I think, and it was plus 8 million in add-ons. I presume they haven't had to pay any of those add-ons. I don't know what the add-ons were.
There are comparisons to be made with Højlund in the sense that he was another tall blonde guy who you said he has all the tools, but maybe his scoring record before this isn't as good as you would want. Now, I do think Sesko is better. At that kind of money, I would want someone who is like 100% slam dunk, let's go. And I don't quite feel that way, but he can definitely. Yeah, I'm hedging my bets a little bit. There is a bit of fence sitting going on because I just think he will score goals, and I don't want to look too stupid when that happens. But there are voices at the back of my head that just screams, this is a lot of money for a guy who isn't completely the finished article and did go missing a fair bit last season.
Sure. And I guess that's the thing. You can't take the money out of it. But when you take the money out of it, Barry, and you look at Cunha and Mbeumo and Sesko, that does seem quite, if I saw that, when they go the Man United starting lineup, I'd be like, that is a good front three.
It is a good front three. If Ruben Amorim can get a tune out of them, I think Ruben Amorim will be a good manager for Manchester United. I'd imagine he sells the club very well or his project very well to prospective signings, and Manchester United clearly have a pulling power that Newcastle don't. The biggest one being that they can afford to pay players more money in wages than Newcastle can. There is talk that players don't want to go to Newcastle because Newcastle is a very isolated city, and the picture painted by some people is that it's some sort of medieval hovel. I mean, I was there during the summer. It's very nice. If I was a footballer, I'd be happy enough to live there, no problem. But Manchester United clearly have this massive reputation. It's a club these young European players are more familiar with, and they have a history of winning things, which last season's Carabao Cup aside, Newcastle don't.
Yeah, I suppose Pete asked this question, Ben, which is, I know money is obviously a factor, but why do players still want to sign for Man United? Do they not look at the number of promising careers that have stalled in the last decades? Or does the level of confidence required to be at that level make them think they can buck the trend? And that's quite an interesting point. Is I just wonder how many players go, this seems to be a graveyard for promising footballers, or I'm really good at football. Why don't I'll be good for them.
Yeah, I think it's that ego thing that you get with managers. When managers take a job, when Ruben Amorim took the Manchester United job, I know the timing was a little bit forced from his side. I know he wanted to take over not mid-season, but I think it's probably the same with players, and especially those ones who have grown up, sort of maybe the back end years of United being this sort of huge force. It still naturally has that pulling power. I think there's players back themselves. I think, Cunha and Mbeumo as examples will think, I can go and replicate what I've done at Wolves and Brentford, respectively, at Old Trafford. What a place to do it when it's all kind of tickety-boo. And I imagine Benjamin Sesko quite likes the idea of being sort of spearheading that. But it does feel, I suppose every signing's a gamble, but it feels so important given the kind of framing around Amorim. We've heard him in pre-season say he wants to beat United for 20 years. Well, he's going to need to start really well. The pressure's going to be on. I do think it probably helps Sesko, say he signs and it doesn't quite happen straight off. You'd like to think Cunha and Mbeumo have goals in them. It's not like they're sort of wingers that sort of provide for strikers, if you like. Their numbers are really impressive last couple of seasons. So that may help as well. But yeah, United's a strange one, isn't it? Because it has been basically a basket case for a while, and yet they kind of keep getting away with it because players still want to join them. They've still got that, the global kind of brand and everything that comes with that, the ability to pay wages. But yeah, it's going to be pressure on from the first game.
And actually, make the point, Lars, the questions you have about what happens behind those three, right? What is the midfield?
Well, this is the thing, because I'm just kind of assuming the fact they've gone big on both Mbeumo and Cunha, and they want a number 9, suggests to me that they want a striker and then Cunha and Mbeumo behind them, which I guess means Bruno Fernandes, central midfielder, is the plan this year. And I just think if that's your front three and Bruno is one of your two in the middle, the guy next to him is going to have an awful lot of stuff to do. Like that can't be Casemiro, I don't think, and it probably can't be Ugarte either, based on what we've seen so far. And it's going to be a tough one for Kobe Mainu. They've been linked with Carlos Baleba from Brighton, which I like a lot because he runs a lot, he covers a ton of ground. But also Brighton are going to want a huge fee for him. So again, you can only sack so many cleaning ladies, to find this money. It's going to be tricky. One other thing I just want to add on Sesko, he does like to wallop one from distance. Like, he's one of those who hits the ball really well and is not afraid of letting fly sometimes from long ranges. Now, you already have Bruno, who does love a speculative hit.
Yeah.
And you've got Cunha absolutely loves that. So I do think United, whatever happens this season, when we get to this sort of end of season goal of the year compilations, I'm expecting United to show up good there with wild shots from distance. But the downside of that is you might also be spending a lot of time watching players kick the ball into the stand for no discernible reason from about 20, 30 yards. So there's a downside to that as well.
Whatever happens, you'll have a good montage, Manchester United fans. Meanwhile, you sort of touched on this, Barry, Newcastle. They're really struggling to bring players in. Alexander Isak, he was ordered to train separately with his teammates and to stay away from a lunchtime training ground barbecue, which is just a lovely tiny sort of bit of information saying, wow, you can't go to the barbecue. And the idea that he'll go, my God, I love sausages so much that maybe I won't sign for Liverpool.
Well, apparently it was a barbecue for players and their families, and none of the families turned up because they all wanted to go to the Manchester United barbecue instead.
Is that right? So we presume Isak goes, and it does leave this issue for Newcastle. And we've touched on it already, you know, where they sit in Pip's pecking order, because, you know, like it looks like Darwin Núñez is going to go to Al Hilal, or they're certainly in talks, and you know they've accepted Núñez's wage demands. What sort of demands could you have that Saudi League has to meet them? Because normally the wage offer is quite you've met my demands. But it's an interesting position that Newcastle find themselves in.
Yeah, their fans are really frustrated, and a lot of them are blaming all this on PSR. I would say, look, I don't have any sympathy for them. I think it's hilarious. But I can understand why others might have sympathy for them. But you can either cry about it, or you can challenge these rules by taking legal action. You can ask your owners to stop funding other clubs, like directly or indirectly, like Liverpool or Chelsea. Or you can generate more revenue by using the avenues that are available to you that you haven't yet exploited. Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool and Man City, according to the last set of accounts they each released, they spent more wages than Newcastle generated in revenue. So Newcastle are constantly going to be playing catch up. It's going to be very difficult for them to break up this red cartel that their fans get so annoyed about. But there are things they can try to do, and on Tuesday I suggest, you know, try to be smarter, be more like Brighton, but they don't have a football director, they don't have a chief executive. Eddie Howe seems to be in charge of transfers as well as trying to coach the team. His nephew is involved in some way. I don't really know what that kind of arrangement is. So while they are being hamstrung to an extent by PSR, they are certainly not making life easy for themselves at all. And it now looks, if they don't get Sesko, Nicholas Jackson seems to be on the radar, bringing him in from Chelsea. They seem to have a stunning lack of imagination when it comes to recruitment. It's just, who does everyone else want? Well, we'll go for them as well. But that's what happens when you don't have a recruitment department that's fit for purpose.
Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I just quite like to see Newcastle take that kind of hardline barbecue approach to the whole thing, in the sense that, as Baz said, you know, it seems like they're sliding down this list of targets. You know, quite clearly, Nicholas Jackson or whoever may be next isn't number one, wasn't number one, probably wasn't even 2 or 3. At what point can Newcastle say, actually, you know, to Alexander Isak, actually, it's not going to happen this summer. You've got, I think he's got 3 years left on his deal. He's a Newcastle player. Yes, he wants to move. And I suppose ultimately the reality is you can't have a player unhappy, and, you know, no doubt there'll be the transfer requests, all the bits and pieces that can come down the track. But I just wonder, at what point did Newcastle say, this just isn't going to work for us? It felt like maybe Sesko was the one where, if we could get him, okay, we'll make it work, as long as the price for Isak is right and healthy. You know, pushing 150 million, huge money. But at what point did the Newcastle actually say, well, no, it doesn't work for us. You're our player. You've got, I think, 3 years left, at least 2 on your contract. And that's how it is. And the reality is that, you know, he's going to get a move down the line. I just wonder, I think that would be quite empowering for the club, especially in a kind of moment, in an era, as Barry said, with these PSR rules, where they feel so frustrated that they can't strengthen, to actually kind of take a bit of a stance, really. And they might have to take a hit down the line. But as I said, maybe it's just wishful thinking, because player power kind of rules.
I quite like going full barbecue. I think that's quite a good, it's a nice phrase. Moving on, Villa have signed Nice striker Evan Gassand for 26 million plus 4.3 million in add-ons. Anyone, brackets Lars, know anything about this guy?
He's fine. I think that's a perfectly like acceptable squad player purchase. He puts himself about. He's got decent sort of physical attributes. Not like an incredible goal scoring record. Scored 12 for Nice last season, but had 8 assists as well. And I think like as a squad addition to give it, because of course they haven't really had a good sort of backup option to Ollie Watkins since Duran left for Saudi, have they? And they had some loan signings, of course, they brought in. But as someone who can take some minutes off of Watkins and be an option, I think that seems kind of sensible.
Everton, David Moyes at one point said they needed 10 players. They're in talks with Jack Grealish, apparently. They've had a bid for Tyler Dibbling rejected from Southampton. They've signed Chelsea's Kieran and Dewsbury Hall. All, Ben, seem like quite good ideas to me.
Yeah, I find Dewsbury Hall a little bit underwhelming, if I'm honest. It's quite a hefty fee, and I suppose that's just what the reality is when you look at what Leicester paid for Harry Winks and Ollie Skip, who were pretty unremarkable last season. So maybe, I think it's 28 million. Maybe that's just what it costs these days for a player of that kind of ranking. But I really like Tyler Dibbling. I think that is going to be an interesting one. I know for a fact Spurs were deemed to be sort of front of the queue by other clubs who were pursuing him, certainly at the turn of the year. Now we know obviously Spurs have gone for Kudus. That would suggest that, they probably wouldn't go in for Dibbling this summer, but he has got lots of admirers. I think it's just a case of who actually wants to take the risk and push the button, because he had such an amazing start. That little kind of, I'll never forget his debut at home St Mary's at home to United. It was just sort of spectacular. And then since then, he hasn't had too many moments. Basically, since Russell Martin left, Russell Martin had struck up this great relationship with him. And I was chatting to Will Steele last week, and he was saying, players these days are very different. Even when he started coaching, and he used Tyler Dibbling as an example and said, he's quite unique. He's quite quiet, he's quite reserved, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to manage people differently. So if David Moyes feels that he can be the one to get out of him, I think he'll be a great signing for somebody who can just go and sort of let him off the leash, as it were.
Sorrell says, better signing, Son to LAFC or Muller to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Lars, what do you reckon?
Maybe I'm obviously biased in this case, but I do think Son, he's lost a touch of pace, which was an issue in the Premier League. He couldn't get away from defenders. He was struggling to make space for himself to do the things he usually does. But I think in MLS, he should still get plenty of shooting opportunities, which is the thing he should still be able to do, right? There's no reason why he can't still hit the ball the way he's been doing. So in the sort of more chaotic world of MLS, I think he can make an impact. But I'm super curious about Müller, right? Because Müller isn't really a kind of player who will pick up the ball and do something incredible on his own. He's always someone his added value has been famously his interpretation of space, famously popping up where you least expect him, which has been very useful for Bayern. I've seen a lot of Bayern games in the Bundesliga where they've had 65% possession and they just can't break someone down. And then suddenly Müller finds space out of nowhere and does something. Does that translate to playing for a much worse team that's not going to create as many chances? I don't know. But then again, as I said, the MLS is a little bit chaotic. So maybe his way of finding space in the chaos will come to the fore there. He's also obviously a great competitor, famously very vocal on the field. I'm very fascinated to see how that goes. Again, talking about the compilations, I'm expecting Son to show up. People on this side of the water very rarely watch MLS, but we do see highlights of Messi doing stuff and big goal. I think you'll see a fair few look at this screamer Heung-min Son scored last night when you wake up and you log on to X. This I can see that happening. Very curious about. I'm gonna have to watch some Vancouver Whitecaps games going forward, which is not a sentence I've said out loud before, I don't think.
Well, watch them and let me know how they go, please. Phil says, has producer Joel done a big Ange, given up on the weekly pod with one eye on his performance for the big live show? This is with reference to Tuesday's The Future of Football pod. There was something wrong with the download where my voice came in at the wrong time repeatedly. If you re-download it or resubscribe or turn it on and off again or whatever, my voice will be in the right place. So our apologies. Many people have been fired, and we'll be back in a second. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Thursday, the 11th of September, we're playing the Troxy in East London. We've checked, Barry, and it's enormous, which we noticed the last time we played the Troxy. So we need you. Think of everything we do for you for nothing. Is that too desperate, Bass? Did that sound desperate, Barry? Or, it's about time listeners pulled their finger out.
I do think it sounded desperate, but I think you make a fair point. We deliver this pod 3 times a week. You get to listen to it. You don't have to pay anything for it. So buy a ticket. Show your appreciation by buying a ticket. If you're, can get to the Troxy for 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th of September.
Think of everything we do for you, you ungrateful bastards.
Yeah.
Yes, tickets can be purchased by heading to theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. The panel to be announced very shortly. We're in very serious contract negotiations with those panelists, but it will be announced.
Well, if it's very serious contract negotiations, it's got to be Wilson.
I can't say anything yet. We've signed an NDA, but you might be right. Anyway, go to that website, theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. Just find our Instagram, my Instagram, or Guardian Football Weeklies or whatever, and you will come and have a nice time. The Championship starts this weekend. Obviously, Leagues 1 and League 2 started last weekend. Birmingham Ipswich on Friday night, Ben. I mean, you obviously cover the AFL in depth for the Guardian. It's a great game to start the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a blinding game, and partly because Birmingham are trying to do what Ipswich did a couple of years ago now in terms of winning back-to-back promotions to the Premier League. Birmingham are kind of unashamedly ambitious. It's kind of, it's going to upset a few people, I think, put a few noses out of joint. They really are, they're going for it. They've signed, I think, 10 players at the last count. That's probably ticking over into 11 or 12 as we speak. They've obviously got a load of momentum. Chris Davies, in his first managerial job, had a record-breaking season, 111 points out of League One. I mean, it was just far too easy for them, but credit to them. They're coming up and they want to mix it with the parachute payment teams, in terms of those teams relegated from the Premier League. One of those being Ipswich, who I was saying in the week, I feel like they kind of got relegated with a bit more grace than Leicester and Southampton, even though they only won one league game this calendar year, which is, not really loads to get too excited about. But I just feel like Leicester and Southampton, there was so much else going on. And Ipswich still have probably the core of the team that came up last time. They've got a strong squad, and also they've got Kieran McKenna, and I think there's a lot to be said for that consistency. This time last year we thought Kieran McKenna was maybe going to Chelsea, Manchester United, have the pick of his clubs. So I think the fact he's back in the Championship with a team he knows, which is probably a better team than he got up last time. Well, it is a better team. I think they'll be really fancied as well. So yeah, Birmingham Ipswich is a great game to start. Just be interesting to see which kind of A-listers the Birmingham entourage bring with them this time, because I feel like we're going to see a bit more of that this season. We saw last season they brought Beckham to the Wrexham game, and there's definitely that kind of stardust around Birmingham. As I said, they got really grand plans, but it'd be interesting if they can kind of back it up.
Just so interesting you talk about the bringing the A-listers, and I think legacy football fans are like, God, it's pointless. But someone was telling me, and I hope it's accurate, that the Wrexham, do you remember that Wrexham Notts County game? I think Ben Foster saved a penalty. That was on TNT. That got more viewers than like an average Premier League game on TNT. Well, it was just sort of a...
So what? It got some viewers.
Well, no, I mean, like, you joke, but it's still astonishing now that it's not the level of football. Like, actually, these, the sort of entertainment, documentary, showbiz part kind of matters in a way that I think, like, intrinsically in my heart, it makes me sort of balk a little bit, going that shouldn't be right. But it does help, right? There's a reason, right? Why famous people advertise shit. I guess that's the truth of it.
Yeah, I did an interview with Tom Wagner, who's the Birmingham chairman, who's, the guy probably coming up with a lot of these ambitious sound bites. He was saying, like, I don't know, the Wrexham rivalry they've created last year, and this kind of both clubs kind of on the rise in the American kind of backing. He's like, lots of other clubs want in on that because of that, Max, because of the kind of crude bottom line, basically. There's a clip in the recent documentary that Birmingham have been filming last season where Wagner congratulates the team on victory over Wrexham, and then he says, actually, I need to go back upstairs because there's 1,000 people up there that I need to spend money on the club. And yeah, that's the reality of what we're looking and working with.
It makes me think, because I've always kind of said, in my opinion. I think football is more a soap opera than a sport, and I think the popularity of football is more to do with all the storylines around it and all the stuff than what actually happens on the field. I've always said that, like for throughout, and I always felt that's a very clever thing to say, and been very happy with myself. But then now when I see the clubs that are turned into actual soap operas become as popular as they have, and that completely overtaking the actual football, I feel like maybe that was not a clever... I mean, maybe it's true, but it's true in a way that I'm no longer comfortable with.
I think you're right. But then if it became a complete soap opera like Neighbours, it would be better than football. So then, if we go...
But how far away from that are we, really? Again, when people are watching teams from that tier, because they appear in a very slickly produced television show, and that's kind of attracting them much more than the more sort of the actual sporting drama higher. Like it's always been this sort of... Increasingly, there is a tug of war between, like, is this a sport or is this just a content mill? And as much as I don't want to be too sarky about it, because anyone who goes into a place like Wrexham or a place like Birmingham and contributes something and creates enthusiasm and brings investment, I don't think we should look down on that just on principle, because I think it's a positive thing. But the whole vibe of that thing is there's something that doesn't sit right with me for some reason.
Sure. Well, I mean, like in Neighbours, when they had Bouncer's Dream, that was when I think Neighbours jumped the shark. So in one of the episodes, if Kyogo Furuhashi has a dream about something and they put that before the game, then maybe we'll say that's when it's gone too far. I mean, he's an interesting signing, Barry, isn't he? I almost corrected you on the last pod where you said they'd signed him from Rennes, because I was like, no, they've signed him from Celtic, because I'd missed an entire part of his career. But it's a brilliant signing for Furuhashi, I think. I'd be fascinated to see what he does in the Championship.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't really understand what happened there. He left Celtic for Rennes in January, signed, I think, a 3-year deal, and now he's at Birmingham City, and he didn't really play for Rennes. I think he made maybe 5 or 6 appearances or something. So Ben might know what happened there. I'm afraid I don't. Just lots of interesting stuff in the Championship. I think there's 11 different managers have taken charge of clubs since the end of last season. It's a very unforgiving league, so one presumes that probably 6 or 7 of them will be sacked by January. There's a real high turnover of managers in the Championship. I was looking at the favourites to win it, the favourites for relegation. Wrexham weren't listed in either. Lots of people saying this is a season of consolidation for them. I have a feeling they might do and get another promotion. I've said since they got promoted from the National League, I could see them in the Premier League within 3 or 4 or 5 years, or 4 to 6 years, and I wouldn't bet against them making the playoffs, scraping through. And there is zero doubt in my mind that they will be a Premier League team, before too long. Snoop Dogg's an investor. He's joined Luka Modric.
What a midfield that is, Snoop and Luka. Yeah. Luka holds and just says, do what you like. You've got a free roll, Snoop.
Very languid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luka holds and Snoop for shizzles his nizzle.
Well, Ben, of those... I mean, the Wrexham is interesting, right? It's interesting. Kiefer Moore signing. Like, they always go for like a big old... does that mean Stephen Fletcher's done his... old target man job, or could they play Moore and Fletcher? I don't know. Connor Cody in as well. Lewis O'Brien from Forest.
Josh Windass.
Yeah, Windass as well.
Ryan Hardy. That's good signing, I reckon.
Yeah, totally. So they've made interesting signings, Ben.
If I had to bracket Wrexham before they signed Kiefer Moore, and not that it should all be about one player, but I do feel that is a significant signing. I think that's a great signing in that system, in that team. As you say, feels like, we've seen Paul Mullin do his turn. Fletcher, Kiefer Moore, I think will score double figures for Wrexham this season. And I think, together with that, that spine, the new spine they've got this season, potentially Danny Ward, Cody, Lewis O'Brien, who's probably the pick of their signings, he turned down, could have gone back to Swansea. He's gone to Wrexham. He's basically in the peak of his career. This is a player that, got to the playoff final with Huddersfield a few years ago. Forest then signed him, didn't really use him. He ended up having, a couple of loans, but now I think he's going to be settled again. I think that's a great sign in midfield. Then more up front. I think a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have been as sort of hot on them. I don't think they would go down, but I don't think they would necessarily trouble the top 6. But I do think their recent business means they could certainly find themselves looking up rather than down.
Marty Cifuentes is in at Leicester. Will Still in at Southampton. Ruben Sellers in at Sheffield United. What of those appointments, who do you think is, who is best placed, do you think?
Well, I think Will Still is probably the most intriguing appointment. This is somebody that we've been aware of for a little while because of his track record in France. Obviously, at 28, he became, I think, the youngest coach in Europe's top 5 leagues. He's got profile, and now we haven't seen him in England before. He's not actually lived in England before. He's English, but he's not really done it here before, apart from managing Preston under 14s when he was on a college course. Spent a bit of time with him last week. He's a really interesting guy, keen to kind of get away from the sense that he was just sort of tapping the space bar on his laptop playing Football Manager, then landed in Ligue 1, and then, here he is. I think he's done a bit more than that. But he has got a job on his hands because, as always is the way with these clubs that are relegated from the Premier League, the squad is so bloated. Leicester as well, for example, took 32 players on their pre-season tour to Austria. Southampton, it's the same. There's a lot of people who you think won't be there in September. We've already mentioned Dibbling, many others. But yeah, I think Will Still is interesting. Him and Cifuentes obviously are new, and that's why I think Ipswich might be best served, just because of that consistency. But yeah, I think Still is definitely intriguing. Yeah, Sheffield United, it was a really messy end for Chris Wilder. His sort of January recruitment was ultimately kind of what he paid the price for. Made a series of loans and one big signing, Tom Cannon. None of them really worked. The Sheffield United owners want to push this kind of data-driven recruitment, which has thrown up some left field signings from Eastern Europe, which I don't think Chris Wilder was too enamoured with, but was kind of happy to sit tight to a degree. Ruben Sellers presumably has said he will work on that basis. Did a great job at Reading. We obviously saw him in Southampton, in the Premier League with Southampton. Did a great job with Reading when they were, having all sorts of financial issues. But I do think, I don't know, they've just lost Amahodzic as well, the big defender who's big sort of pillar for them. Kiefer Moore, even though, I don't think too many Sheffield United fans would be too disappointed to see him go.
But that is 2 pillars. That's 2 pillars. I mean, that's the whole thing falling down, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got Louis Barry in, who would be interesting. He scored loads of goals for Stockport. But yeah, but he went on loan to Hull under Sellers last season and didn't really do it. So it'd be interesting to see if he can perform. But yeah, I'd be more doubtful about Sheffield United, I think.
Baz, who else interests you?
Well, Rob Edwards has taken over at Middlesbrough, who have been out of the Premier League for quite some time now, and Ryan Mason at West Brom. He's left Spurs, where he was Ange's assistant, and he's been at Spurs for quite some time. So I'm curious to see how they'll get on. Sheffield Wednesday already look absolutely nailed on for relegation. Will they even be able to field a team? That's going to be interesting to see in a sort of rubbernecking fashion. And yeah, I think Edwards at Borough could be interesting. And we don't really have any idea whether Ryan Mason is any good or not as a manager, but we'll find out, I suppose.
Yeah. And who are up, along with Sheffield Wednesday, Ben, who do you think will struggle?
Hull. I think Hull and Sheffield Wednesday are both up against a 3-window ban in terms of paying fees for players. Both clubs are appealing it, but it remains to be seen if they, overturn it. Sheffield Wednesday's actually been turned into 4, so that's actually until June 27. So if it wasn't bleak enough already, it certainly is there. As Barry says, I mean, it's been quite a sort of depressing week for Wednesday, or weeks. The fans have united, but behind the team, behind the club, they're going to protest. They've sold out the away end. They're going to protest first 5 minutes of the game. They're planning on not being in their seats, basically, to kind of give off the impression of what it would look like if Wednesday weren't here. Obviously, Barry Bannon has said he'll stay put. Not expected to be any problems with registering him because he's a player already there. And they will work with the EFL in terms of registering players, I understand. So it's not a case of they can't add to the squad full stop, but it's going to be very tricky because of all the financial reasons and limitations under Chansiri, who we are told is trying to sell the club, and the EFL are working with him to sell the club. Here we have another example of an owner who has just got to a point where seemingly he can't fund the club, he can't meet the obligations. There's creditors, HMRC, wages going late 3 months running. Fans are turning up to the training ground trying to provide staff with stuff to get them through their day and, food and drink. It's not how it should be. And it will be interesting to see what happens beyond Sunday, because yes, they're going to play Sunday, but how long can this go on for? I suppose that's the question, and that's the concern really, because it can't.
Yeah. The EFL did release a statement, saying a lot of things you said, Ben, that they are, they are working, they're in daily contact with the club. They are engaging with the supporters. They talked about the confidentiality of some of the meetings with the trust. That was after that video that we spoke about, where one supporter said they weren't really helping at all. So the EFL are saying that they are doing everything in their powers to help Sheffield Wednesday, even if some of the supporters don't necessarily see it that way.
Well, the thing is that they might be doing everything in their powers, but their powers are very limited. So,
of course. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin by paying tribute to George Costa. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So very sad news out of Portugal. Former Porto captain George Costa died at the age of 53. He had a cardiac arrest at the club's training centre. He led Porto to Champions League glory under Jose Mourinho in 2004. He won 50 caps for Portugal. Spent a season on loan at Charlton in the Premier League in 01-02. If you remember, it was him and was it Jonathan Fortune? And it was Costa Fortune was the centre back
with Luke Young at right back as well. So it was the young fish Costa Fortune is what it was.
Yeah, no, it was, wasn't it? There was you might have seen Jose Mourinho giving a really emotional press conference when he just said, "It's part of my history that goes." This was Jose at Fenerbahce's press conference ahead of their game against Feyenoord. Of course, I'm very sad. But I'm here because if he could speak with me now, he would tell me, "Come on, do your press conference tomorrow, play the game and win, mister. Forget about me." That would be George. So that's what I'm going to do, try to do my job today, do my job tomorrow, and cry afterwards. Porto said throughout his life, both on and on the pitch, George Costa embodied the values that define FC Porto: dedication, leadership, passion, unshakable spirit of conquest. He left his mark on generations of fans. Yeah, and look, some player, Lars, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, I mean, he obviously most remembered probably for being part of the defensive back to centre half pairing with Ricardo Carvalho for Jose Mourinho in his Champions League winning Porto team. And the fact that his nicknames were the animal and the tank gives you an idea what kind of defender he was, like fully uncompromising. It is very odd that he ended up spending a year on loan with Charlton Athletic, but that was because he fell out with the coach of Porto at the time, and he needed to play football because of the World Cup coming up the next summer. So he spent a year in South London, which I'm sure would have been quite an experience for everyone. And was just the thing Mourinho also said. He was the kind of captain who would, as Mourinho called it, clear out the trash or something. Like he was someone who could police the dressing room for you. He was a man's man, an old school captain who, the coach's general, all this sort of stuff, and was back at Porto now as a director of football under the presidency of André Villas-Boas. Obviously very, very sad for him and for his family that he's gone at an age of 53, which is horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. No age at all. Elsewhere, news that former Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey, this is the Guardian writing, is poised to join Villarreal's upset fans of the Spanish club. Around 800 have signed a petition urging a halt to what's been described as the darkest day in the club's history. Partey appeared in a London court on Tuesday, charged with 5 counts of rape relating to 2 women and a charge of sexual assault against a 3rd woman. The alleged offences said to have taken place in 2021 and 2022 when Partey was playing for Arsenal. He was granted conditional bail on Tuesday. The chief magistrate said he understood the 32-year-old would soon be moving to Spain. Villarreal have agreed to sign him on a 1-year deal with an option to extend by 12 months. Partey's lawyer, Jenny Wiltshire, has said previously that he denies all the charges against him and he welcomed the opportunity to finally clear his name. On the pitch, Rangers, I don't know how many Champions League qualifiers there are. I presumed once you'd done one, then you were like, you were okay, but they've got another one now against Victoria Pilsen. They won 3-0. Good goals in there, Barry, I thought.
Yeah, well, they've already beaten Panathinaikos. They're now 3-0 up against Victoria Pilsen after the first leg. If they win this, They will go into a playoff against RB Salzburg or Club Brugge, and if they win that, they will be in the group stage of the Champions League. Just to clear that up for you, Max.
Thank you.
But yeah, they've got this young lad called Jaidi Gassama, who has now scored 4 goals in 4 games for them. They've all come in the Champions League qualifiers. I thought he got 2 great ones last night. First one was a beauty, nice passing move in which he latched onto a little weighted through ball into the box and sent one past the keeper just inside the far post. And his second was a lovely header. They came either side of a Cyril Desser's penalty. I thought it was a soft penalty, or it shouldn't have been a penalty, but they got it anyway. So they're 3-0 up, looking fairly home and hosed going into the second leg. And I think everyone last night was interested to see who Russell Martin would drop after taking what Chris Sutton described as a machine gun to his team after their opening day draw against Motherwell in the Scottish Premiership. James Tavernier and Nicholas Raskin seemed to have been the ones who had the big finger of blame pointed at them. But after the match, Martin said, look, you can read into what you will, but it's no big deal. We're going to have a lot of games. I will pick teams depending on what I feel we need on the pitch. And my team, I think they're at home to Dundee on Saturday. And he said, I'll probably pick a different team again when we play Dundee. Obviously, if they don't beat Dundee at Ibrox, all hell is likely to break loose. But once again, Russell has bought himself some more time, which I suspect that's what he'll be doing for a lot of this season.
Yeah, possibly. They're also excited about a winger called Ant-Man, which is not Paul.
Yes.
Not Paul Rudd. It is a guy called Oliver Ant-Man, who they signed from Go Ahead Eagles. Also in the Champions League qualifying last night, we mentioned Fenerbahce. They lost 2-1 at Feyenoord. Benfica beat Nice away 2-0. And Lars, you were saying it's so interesting that these teams have to play these incredibly important games at such an early stage of the season.
Yeah, it is mad, but I do understand that in order to have many routes into the Champions League and for it to not be a Super League, you do have to have some kind of qualifying stage. It makes sense, but you do end up with a situation where for a lot of these teams, it is their most important games of their season, like full stop, because of the money and the prestige that comes with being in the Champions League. And you get them in early August. Like it's completely bizarre. There's no time to prepare. So you get Benfica beating Sir Jim Radcliffe's other team, Nice, 2-0 in France in the first leg. So bad times for Sir Jim. Shocked to see Dante lining up in defense for Nice still. He's 41. it's incredible.
Oh,
I mean, I think he's been playing senior professional football.
Has he hit his peak?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, Max, but I decided that's okay for the other pod, isn't it? I mean, we're too good for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But Dante has been playing professional football since 2002, which is wow. Remarkable, and he's still there. I was looking at the highlights this time. I haven't got the wrong highlights. He can't possibly be, but there he is. Feyenoord beat Fenerbahce. The only thing I just want to flag up while we have time from the wacky world of Champions League qualifiers. So Kairat Almaty from Kazakhstan beat Slovan Bratislava 1-0. First leg, Bratislava could turn it around. But I just thought this was remarkable. They scored with a 90th minute, like injury time penalty, put away by their striker, Dastan Satpaev, who is 16 years old. They put up a 16-year-old kid to take a 90th minute penalty in a Champions League qualifier. He was born in August 2008, which is a horrendous thought.
Dante had been playing for 7 years.
For years. I mean, he was already a grizzled professional. Also, in the heart of defense for Bratislava, as you should know by now, is Guram Kashia, the Georgian national team captain, who is a Football Weekly listener. Gamajoba Guram, if you're listening. But I just think he's 38 now. If you're a 38-year-old centre half and you're set to mark a 16-year-old, it's a bit of a long night of the soul, isn't it? That like 90 minutes of thinking, like, I'm still doing this? Didn't watch the game. Maybe Guram did a tremendous job. I hope you did. Maybe you guys can turn it around in the second leg.
Brian says, I'm getting married to Nikki on Thursday, the 7th of August, as is today. 4 years to the day after our first date near Chelmsford in Essex. What is my second chance of love at 50? I've listened to you through the rough times of a divorce and through the great times of this new relationship. I love listening to you and your various panels of experts. It brings multiple joys Multiple joints of joy to my week, he says. I've had a vasectomy, so I feel part of the club. I'm also very much aware Barry brings hope and joy to all newlyweds and was hoping he could do the same for us in Thursday's pod. We get married in Bury St Edmunds on Thursday. Or you could go to Rollerberry and roller skate your way to the reception. Have a reception in the local village in which we bought a house together in January this year. Nikki's not a football fan, quite the opposite. So anything Barry can say to convince her to love the game like I do would be much appreciated. I look forward to hearing the Premier League preview in your pods by the pool in Lake Garda on our honeymoon. Oh, I'm jealous. Love to you all. Regards, Brian. Brian and Nikki, Barry.
Brian and Nikki from Chelmsford in Essex. I'm going to say Brian's got gleaming white turkey teeth, a hair transplant. He wears trousers that don't quite reach his ankles, no socks.
A Mazda sports car.
He's got a Mazda sports car. The house they've bought is red brick in an estate, 3 bedrooms, very nice house. It's got those pictures on the wall with motivational
live, love, life.
Slogans on them. Live, love, life. They've got probably a Doberman or an XL Bully.
Just from Chelmsford. I mean, this is absolutely this is disgraceful discrimination.
Sherlock Baz.
They're happy. It's their day today.
I now have an image of. I also have an image of Nikki in my head, but it's her special day. Yeah. It's her day, Brian, not yours. It's Nikki's day, and I hope that they have a lovely day. And who are we thinking Brian supports? He's probably a Gooner, isn't he, or a Spurs fan?
I have no idea.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I hope they have a lovely, lovely day. And do you think they met on Love Island? Or no, he said where they met.
I don't think they have. They met when he was 46. I don't think, and I am 46 myself. I think the days of me being asked or me applying and accepted to go on Love Island are gone. I think it'd be
Have you tried?
I've never tried.
I think they should have a Love Island for unattractive middle-aged people like me.
Yes.
I think I'd be good on it.
There's a lot of sitting around doing nothing. Maybe you would be good.
I'm very good at sitting around doing nothing.
I was going to say as I said it. Tom says, question for Barry. Any comment on this? It is a graph with the name Barry in the UK going from 1920. It's not a very detailed graph, but 1920s through the 40s, 60s, up to today. And it has not many Barrys. And then like a sort of normal distribution. About 1965, 1970, lots of Barrys. Now into 2025, not many Barrys. Have you any thoughts, Barry? Do you think you, as given your profile, you could start a new... Are we waiting for the first Barry? You know, because we've had lots of weddings, not a few babies, but no one has yet to say, we've called our son Barry after Barry Glendenning.
Well, given the amount of vasectomies we've had, I'm not confident of having too many more babies. But if you look at the famous Barrys, there's Keoghan, White, Humphreys, Manilow, Bonds, Bannon, Gibb, Sheen, Barry John, and of course Barry Glendenning. We may be low on quantity. We may be low on quantity, Max, but we are very, very high on quality.
I can't disagree. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Phil Maynard. Back on Monday.
This is The Guardian.